spring whispers and intel. Some spring games already wrapping up, but we've got juice from like half a dozen or more programs right now, so I want to get it to you really, really quickly. Georgia. First off today, there's some breaking news. So a couple of the rumors that you've been hearing about, they're official. Five-star offensive lineman Amarius Mims in the transfer portal. Ditto for Clay Webb from a couple of cycles ago in the transfer portal. And now you see what the consequences of success are all about. Two things are true here. Number one, Georgia will forever have to worry about talented players leaving the program via the transfer portal. The other thing that's true is they're probably always going to be fine even after it happens. This is number 10 and now number 11, for the record, that have entered the portal since they won the national championship. So you can either look at that as a bad thing or a byproduct, aka the consequences of success that we talk about here all the time. They deal with it at Bama. They will be dealing with it at A&M. They'll be dealing with it at Southern Cal. They deal with it anywhere there is any kind of high-level success. But I don't want to talk about that tonight so much. I want to talk about the quarterback position, because if you thought, ignorantly so, that just watching Georgia win a national championship and the quarterback be named MVP of the game was enough to quiet a lot of the quarterback drama around this program, you were wrong, friend. Take that common sense, ball it up, and throw it out the nearest window. What's happening here is kind of entertaining if you're not so wrapped up in it. The best way I can summarize this is the same way Kirby Smart did throughout the majority of last year, when Kirby Smart had to look at a lot of people when they were asking him, whether they were reporters or fans. That at the time they were talking about JT Daniels and when's he going to be put back in the mix over Stetson Bennett. And Kirby kept saying, I'm playing the guy who gives us the best chance to win. Well, here we are. There is a big difference in what you want to be true and what is true. What a lot of Georgia fans want to be true is for there to be a better option than Stetson Bennett, even after the guy won the national championship. They want there to be a better option. They want either Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff to have taken the next step because they had more stars next to their name. Maybe they got more arm talent, whatever the physical characteristics you think they possess that gives them a higher ceiling may be. You want them to take the job by the throat. That's what you want to be true. What is true in the national championship game, in the month leading up to the national championship game, and probably moving forward is Stetson Bennett's still the best quarterback on this team, and Stetson Bennett probably still gives you the best chance to win. But there's a Venn diagram that basically makes up a perfect circle at this point, and the Venn diagram is in Circle A, the folks who swore to you the only way Georgia was going to make any noise in the playoff was JT Daniels being inserted at quarterback and Stetson Bennett being benched. And then there's Circle B over here, and that is even after you've seen the national championship win, it's either got to be Beck or Vandagriff. I mean, there's no way Stetson Bennett can still be the best quarterback on this team. And then you overlap them, and that's a perfect circle. There's what you want to be true, and then there's what is true. And as of today, all the reputable people around this program, including the head man, will tell you the same thing. Stetson Bennett gives them the best chance to win. I'll tell you a name that stands out as we move on from Georgia here, though. Eric Gilbert. Remember last year, he came there through the transfer portal by way of LSU, and then he was out. And he was dealing with stuff off the field the entire year. Well, Eric Gilbert is now back. He's moved back to his familiar position of tight end, playing around 270. Going to have to lose some weight, but early returns are positive. Still got a long way to go, but early returns are positive, so keep an eye on that. Let's head up the road a bit to Clemson. They had their spring game yesterday. About 35,000 people showed up. They had 17 players held out. A lot of takeaways here. We're going to rapid-fire run through them. Defense had 13 total sacks in this thing. There were, I think, 22 tackles for loss. That would be like a good month, and they had it yesterday. So there was not much offense to speak of. I still cannot be sold on the wide receiver position here. I don't know how anyone could. Nada clearly looks to be their best option, but outside of the tight end position, which looks pretty good, I don't know that you could draw any conclusions from the spring game yesterday, and I don't know, therefore, that you can draw any conclusions moving forward as to whether that passing game, and especially the deep threats and the perimeter skill will be resurrected to the degree that it used to look, because it ties right back to quarterback. And when it comes to the quarterback position, I got to be completely honest with you. I listened to what Dabo Swinney said after the spring game yesterday, which was, quote, DJ Uiagalelei is definitely our starter. He had a great spring. He hasn't done anything to not be the starter. I listened to that, and I think to myself, I don't see any definite starter. At least I didn't when I watched the spring game yesterday. Now, the spring game is the spring game. It's a fool's errand to draw definitive conclusions from that. I'm doing quite the opposite. I'm not drawing any conclusion. I'm sitting here telling you I think that thing's wide open. And I think Cade Klubnik definitely poses a real threat to ending up being the starting quarterback on this team because some of the same issues that you saw last year still seem to be plaguing DJ Uiagalelei. It's not a bad quarterback. I'm not telling you he is. There's that group out there that either thinks you're great or you suck. I'm not saying either one of those things about DJ. What I am saying is if accuracy continues to be a problem and you don't have half a dozen bail-me-out receivers, the likes of which Trevor Lawrence played with, seems like a long time ago, you got pocket presence like Klubnik has, you got awareness, you got better accuracy, which I think he has, than DJ. That's the recipe for a quarterback competition. So Dabo says he feels good about both of them. I do too, so much so that I don't think this is decided. Even though he's the head coach there, I don't think that Uiagalelei is definitely the starter. We'll see. Moving on, Auburn. Yeah, those are the first two comments I want to have made about Auburn football so far this spring. This could be the most up-in-the-air quarterback race in America. Find me a better one because we've got three names here. I don't think the true, for the record, as I tee this up, I don't think the true freshman is going to be included there. So TJ Finley's in the mix, obviously. Zach Calzada transferred in, didn't get to work a whole lot because of injury this spring. Robbie Ashford, the Oregon transfer, is in the mix here. And you could probably, if you walk the streets down there, you could probably do a man-on-corner segment or a man-on-street segment where over 10 minutes you could find people who promise you all three of them are going to start for Auburn this year. It's totally up in the air. I don't think that coaching staff has the slightest clue who their starter is going to be. Brian Harsin essentially said as much yesterday. It's tough to gauge, though, because their perimeter skill is lacking. For that matter, they got depth issues all up and down this roster. It is going to be Tank Bigsby's team. That's no mystery, but that's why people made such a big deal about it when that running back, that horse running back they have, Tank Bigsby, when he did not enter the transfer portal, although there were rumors circulating that he was. That's why it was such a win. That's why it was a big deal that Harsin talked him out of it. Because if they didn't have him, the over-under win total for this team is already going to be at or just south of bowl contention, 6 wins, 5 wins. It'd be less than that if they didn't have Tank Bigsby. But I will tell you this, they have issues at Auburn that feel kind of similar to what Florida State's dealing with right now. You've got a new-ish coaching staff in there, still dealing with some of the depth and attrition issues that the previous staff left them. And they've got critical issues, places like offensive line, places like wide receiver, and they're finding that it takes more than one cycle and it takes more than one swing or two through the transfer portal to replenish a roster. That's why people make such a big deal about it. And the Xbox crowd listens to that and it goes totally over their head because you can hit reset in that world. You can't hit reset in this world. When you try and hit reset in this world, you got to pay a big buyout first off, then you got to pay a new staff, then you got to sit there and you got to wait. And that's in a perfect environment. Then imagine if half the administrative types and booster types are trying to oust you after 1 year. That's the task they have at hand at Auburn. So I don't get great vibes from down there right now, but at the same time, I do love the vision that Harsin has. I like the way he carries himself. I like the way he's trying to run the program. Is he going to be given enough time? Because they don't have what they need right now. Is he going to be given enough time? That's the big question there. At Nebraska, I wanted to touch on them for a second. They have not been over 500 since 2016. I have to look down to make sure I say that right. Since 2016. Guys, that's quite a while ago. Now that I think about it, they have not been over 500. And yet they had over 54,000 at the spring game yesterday. And believe me, I sat through it so you didn't have to. This was not the most entertaining of spring games. And the crowd still showed up there in Lincoln. Hoped to see more of Casey Thompson. For those not keeping track, yes, that is former Texas starting quarterback Casey Thompson, who is now transferred to Nebraska. I think he will be their starter. He threw the ball like 4 times yesterday, so it's certainly not because of what we saw in the spring game. But Chubba Purdy is a name that transferred in from Florida State. You saw more of him yesterday, and I think if you just watched the spring game or you just listened to maybe Twitter rumors, you'd probably think that this is a dead heat quarterback battle. The intel we get from Nebraska is that's probably not the case. Probably Casey Thompson's job. I am a believer that it is Thompson's job to lose. Not decided, but I do believe it's Thompson's job to lose. But the big question you see everyone asking when you watch Nebraska's spring game and you get intel from spring practice and Scott Frost does his media availability is all tied to the same question. Are we going to make a bowl game? So Nebraska famously was 3-9 last year, and they had 8 of those 9 losses by 1 possession. And then the 9th loss, I think, was by 9 points. So they very nearly had 9 losses, all 1 possession. So I ask this. Think of the sharpest football mind you've ever known. Go find the best scout you have ever known or heard of. And I want to ask them a question. When everyone asks, are they a bowl team? Are they a bowl team? The sharpest football mind in the history of this game does not have the skill to watch a team in spring and know whether a bounce or 2 of the ball exists per game that will thrust them from a 3-win caliber team to a 7-win caliber team. Because that's what we're talking about here. We're not talking about a team losing by multiple scores because of one glaring position weakness. You know, if they didn't have any offensive linemen last year, or if they didn't have any quarterback and then they got a magical transfer or a couple of magical transfers in, it'd be easy because you'd just be scouting one position group. That wasn't the case with Nebraska last year. Quite literally, they were 1 bounce in 8 games plus away from all those games turning. So how do you watch a spring game and know if that's changed or not is my point. They're going to be competitive again. They opened the season, by the way, in Ireland. We shouted out Dublin earlier. They opened there, I think, against Northwestern. Where else would you want to see Nebraska play Northwestern, aside from Dublin, Ireland? Seems like peanut butter and jelly. It's just a natural fit there to me. We continue. Let's head back down south for a second. Alabama, and I'm going to tell you something that is going to shock you right now. Nick Saban hit multiple home runs in the transfer portal. And now your mouth hangs wide open, and I want you to pick that jaw up off the ground. Yes, Alabama has lucked out again. They just happened to take a shot in the dark and hit on Jermaine Burton, who you can go ahead and pencil in for a 1,000-plus receiving yard season if he maintains health. That's the transfer at wide receiver from Georgia. Because, yes, we live in a world now where you beat a team in the national championship one day and then go play for them the next day. Yes, friends, that's the world we live in now. But Jahmyr Gibbs is a name I want to talk to you about. That's the running back transfer from Georgia Tech. I've had someone in the world of scouting, since we were just talking about that, tell me that was the best player in the ACC last year. It's a lofty statement. And he transfers to Alabama. What I didn't tell you at the time, that I'll tell you now, is he got there in the middle of national championship preparation. Let me tell you what Nick Saban did with him. On the first day that Jahmyr Gibbs stepped on campus, he put him in with the ones. Then he ran him against the one defense. And let me tell you what Jahmyr Gibbs did on day 1 in a crimson uniform, even at practice. He put jaws on the ground too, but not in a sarcastic way, in quite literal a way. He's the best running back they have on the roster. He was the moment he walked in. Now, they have very good running backs there. To remind you, Trey Sanders is 2 years removed now from that car wreck that nearly took his career away from him. Once upon a time, he was the number 1 back in the nation. Jace McClellan, I love, who was a stud before he got hurt last year. He'll be back. Roydell Williams, another really dependable, solid running back. He'll be back. So they're fairly loaded at running back, but Jahmyr Gibbs is a very special player. And I'll tell you what else is special. Their pass rush. So much so that they sit here in spring just openly talking about ways that we can get Will Anderson and Dallas Turner and Chris Braswell on the field at the same time, maybe in a dime defense look. They are going to harass quarterbacks. The real question about this team, I'm not calling it a weakness, I am very intentionally calling it a question, is the offensive line situation. Kendall Randolph, for example, is that a guy cut out to play left tackle in the SEC? J.C. Latham, former 5-star offensive lineman, now 2 years into his college career. Is he a guy ready to lock down a right tackle position in the SEC? I think they'll be okay on the interior, but those are some very first world problems that we're monitoring at Alabama. Now we get to a team that you accuse me of being a homer of, and I never deny it. I'm fine with it. The entire set's blue. Why not? What about North Carolina? I saw our buddy Brad Powers talking about them a little bit today on Twitter.com, and he, I think, is thinking the same thing I am, and that is, I think a lot of us were a year too early on them. I've said that a number of times already this spring. But Mac Brown made some interesting comments yesterday. He said there's a big difference in what we did last year and what we've done this year so far. And he went a step further. He said there's a big difference in participating in spring practice versus competing in spring practice. They went full tackle to the ground the entire spring, which I know it sounds commonsensical, but it's very rare this day and age. And North Carolina, has had, by all accounts, an extremely physical, competitive spring session. It's not something that you take for granted these days, and it's not something they had last year. And you could sense it in Mack Brown's voice as they lost to Virginia Tech. He was very quick that opening weekend, remember? To find the nearest microphone and say, I guess now we can actually get down to work because a lot of you who overrated us don't really have to worry about that anymore. I guess a lot of those preseason expectations are out the window. Now we can get to work. Now, look, that's ultimately his job. That's ultimately that coaching staff's job. I'm not making excuses for him, but reality was reality. It sounds like they have a different mentality there. Less is going to be expected of them. I think they'll end up being better this year than they were last year. Now, what were they last year? So I understand that's not exactly a loaded statement. But the quarterback competition here is very real. We have talked about this before. Drake May is a guy I think most people have still penciled in to start for them. But Jacoby Criswell is not a guy going away. We talked about this a couple of weeks ago. It sounds like we're going to be talking about it for a while. Those are two guys they can win with. I feel like ultimately, come fall, those are going to be two guys plenty capable enough to win with. But let me just mention two names to you. If you follow recruiting, you already know them. Zach Rice, who was a 5-star offensive tackle they hit on him. They hit on him. True freshman starter. They hit on him. The other one is 5-star defensive lineman Travis Shaw. They hit on him. A couple of studs. You talk to people who are over there, it takes them about 5 seconds before they say, yeah, quarterback, whatever. Let me tell you about Travis Shaw. Let me tell you about Zach Rice. Those guys are no doubters. So the evals over there, the recruiting over there, it hasn't dropped off. The expectations will, and that's okay. We're going to take a shot on North Carolina this year. What about Florida State? They had their spring game yesterday, kind of a practice format. Still had about 30,000 folks there. The overall feel I get after spring in Tallahassee is Mike Norvell still does not have the horses he needs to run Mike Norvell's offense. Everyone is going to watch Florida State this year, and at some point, whether they're winning close or losing close, and I do think they'll be competitive either way, they'll be saying to themselves, when's Norvell going to run that Memphis offense here? Well, he can't yet. I don't think he has the players yet. I don't think he has the receivers yet. Truth be told, I don't think he has the quarterback. There's a lot of hope that A.J. Duffy eventually is that guy. Dude was 1 for 8 yesterday. It's just not there yet. That doesn't mean it won't be there, but he's very young. So it's just not there yet. I don't know that Jordan Travis, for example, who is a QB1 there, I don't know that he possesses the perfect skill set to do what Mike Norvell wants to do. Those are some of the bad news, glass half empty type takes, but also offensive line, not exactly a stellar unit there. You can talk about all that. But here's the good news. Again, it looks like they have hit across the board virtually via the transfer portal. So yesterday, for example, Trey Benson is a running back transfer who carried it, 7 times for 77 yards yesterday. He's a guy who's going to be a big-time contributor for them. I think Micah Pittman, receiver, big-time contributor, should be for them. Jared Verse, defensive end, big-time contributor for them. They've got, probably half a dozen or more out of the portal this past cycle who are going to be immediate contributors. They're going to need them. And that's good news. The bad news is you're in a position where you have to have them. They're also in a position where there's no way they're done in the portal yet. I mean, they've been banged up on the offensive line, but still, even if fully healthy, I don't think they're where they want to be along that position group. Same thing as we talked about with Auburn. You don't just snap your fingers after 1 or 2 years and make all the problems that the other staff got fired for go away. That's not the way it works. So they continue to work down there at Florida State. But I'll tell you the same thing that everyone close to the program says. When you talk to folks close to Florida State, they tell you a couple things. They'll tell you in some combination of phrasing the same thing I just did, whether it be this position group or that position group. We're not there yet. They're going to struggle here. They're going to struggle there. But then they follow it up with, but they're improving. Like, no one doubts that around Florida State. Everything is improving. It's not always linear. It's not always completely in a perfect straight line, but they're improving. So what do you do? Do you throw Mike Norvell and his staff out the door if they don't win 8 or 9 games this year? Even if you see improvement? I don't think so. So they've given him time and space so far. I think they need to continue to do so. It's not that there's any smoke down there or hot seat talk, but I'm just saying if they win 7 games this year, you know what the talk will be. But yet if they've shown improvement in doing so, I think it's going to be a more nuanced conversation is what I'm saying. What about Ole Miss? Remember, they had the top overall transfer portal class. Now, you all remember that. But you also remember that once spring comes, not all of them pan out. Well, at Ole Miss, they're pretty much all panning out. Jackson Dart was the most high profile in nature. That's the USC quarterback who transferred to Ole Miss. Now, there's a big quarterback competition here as well. The widely held assumption out there is it's a not if, but a when sort of scenario as to when Jackson Dart's eventually going to be the starting quarterback at Ole Miss. And I'll just put it to you like this. I still also believe it'll ultimately be Jackson Dart. But Ole Miss insiders would tell you if they had to play a game today, it wouldn't be. It'd be Luke Altmaier. Now, that's not shocking. Altmaier's been in the system. Jackson Dart got there 15 minutes ago. But here is what you take solace in. If Jackson Dart does not end up being the starting quarterback here, it's not going to be because he blew it. It's going to be because he just flat out got beat for the job. That's a good thing because you know what competition breeds, especially at that position. So sounds very good at Ole Miss right now. That's a program, frankly, after last season, I had a ton of concern about. There were questions about whether the head coach was still going to be there. And then, of course, you're losing Matt Corral. You're losing a lot of talent. And they rebounded in a big way. Also lost coaches. It rebounded in a big way. So Ole Miss looks to have steadied the ship, and they're going to be a serious player again this year. Also wanted to hit on LSU. A lot of talk about quarterback down there. We got plenty of time to do that. But I'll tell you the biggest headline coming out of Baton Rouge right now is the name John Emery. John Emery is a guy that it feels like for the last decade we have talked with each other, and I've said, is this the year that John Emery is going to be a true number one tailback in the SEC? So far, the answer has been no. All the returns from down there are that that's changing. That's a big deal, especially at a place where you don't have a surefire first-round lock quarterback at your disposal. Got some good options, but it really would behoove LSU to have a strong run game. Now, I'll tell you what else is happening down there. Will Campbell, former major prospect there, has moved to left tackle. And they've got Wire and Doomerville, a couple of guys fighting for the right tackle spot. Now, if you follow LSU closely, you'll know how very hilarious this quote was from, I think it was the Go 24/7 board, when someone said, are we seriously moving tackles to guard? Because it's always been the opposite down there. Someone said, the quote for LSU football has been LSU, where guards come, or where tackles come to play, where guards come to be starting tackles since 2008. That's always been the case. You've always read LSU practice reports, and this former left guard, or this former center or right guard is out here playing right tackle, and people wonder, when in the world are we finally going to have tackles playing tackle? Well, now not only do they have that, they got tackles kicking down inside. How about that? What a day in Baton Rouge. Those are some things that are happening right now. We obviously have plenty more spring games to go, so those are some of the whispers and intel that we're hearing. Can't fit it in an entire show, or we would literally be on air 3 hours. A lot going on right now, so keep it locked here for that.